I never imagined my own parents would hold a funeral while I was still alive. But they did. They stood in front of our church, accepted hugs from neighbors, cried into each other's shoulders, and thanked people for their prayers. Everyone believed their daughter had died in a terrible accident. They even placed my favorite childhood picture beside a white casket filled with flowers. The only problem was, I was still alive. 9 years later, I stood under the bright lights of a national television studio as millions of Americans watched me receive one of the country's highest humanitarian awards. I smiled through tears while the audience applauded. Somewhere across the country, my parents were staring at their television in complete silence, realizing that the daughter they had buried was alive and about to tell the entire nation the truth. If you've ever been judged by the people who were supposed to love you the most, stay with me. Because what happened after that broadcast changed every life involved forever. My name is Grace Bennett, and this happened in Nashville, Tennessee. When people think about childhood, they usually remember birthday parties, family vacations, or lazy summer afternoons. When I think about mine, I remember trying to earn my father's approval. My father, Thomas Bennett, believed respect was more important than love. He rarely smiled. He rarely hugged anyone. Everything had to be perfect. Shoes polished. Beds made. Grades above 95. Church every Sunday. No excuses. No mistakes. Whenever I brought home a report card with straight A's, he simply nodded and said, "That's what I expect." Never once did he say he was proud of me. My mother, Susan, loved me in quiet ways. She tucked notes into my lunchbox. She waited up when I studied late. She kissed my forehead before school. But whenever my father spoke, she became silent. Looking back now, I realize she spent most of her life trying not to upset him. I also had an older brother, Ethan. Dad treated him differently. If Ethan made mistakes, Dad called them learning experiences. If I made the same mistakes, they became disappointments. I never understood why, so I worked even harder. By high school, I was captain of the debate team, volunteered every weekend at a homeless shelter, and graduated near the top of my class. Everyone said my parents must be proud. I wished they were. College changed my life. I earned a scholarship to Vanderbilt University and dreamed of becoming an investigative journalist. I wanted to tell stories that mattered, stories that gave forgotten people a voice. My father hated the idea. "Journalists create problems," he said over dinner one evening. "They expose problems," I answered carefully. "They embarrass good people. They expose dishonest people." His fork hit the plate a little harder than usual. "You always have to argue." I wasn't arguing. "You were correcting me." Mom quickly changed the subject before another fight could begin. That became normal in our house. Silence was easier than honesty. During my second year of college, I met Daniel Brooks. He wasn't rich. He wasn't famous. He drove an old pickup truck that rattled every time he started the engine. But he had the kindest heart I had ever known. Daniel volunteered with veterans every Saturday. He coached Little League baseball. He remembered birthdays. He remembered people's favorite coffee. He treated waitresses with respect. He listened more than he spoke. Our first date wasn't expensive. We bought hot chocolate from a food truck and walked beside the Cumberland River until midnight. At one point he looked at me and smiled. "You don't have to impress me." "What do you mean? You always sound like you're afraid of saying the wrong thing." Nobody had ever noticed that before. I laughed nervously. "Maybe I am. You don't have to be." For the first time in my life, I believed someone truly saw me. Over the next 2 years we built a quiet, beautiful relationship. There were no dramatic moments. No games. No lies. Just trust. When I graduated, Daniel surprised me with a picnic at Centennial Park. As the sun disappeared behind the trees, he reached into his pocket. "I don't have a fancy speech." I laughed. "Good. I just know I don't want another day without you." He opened a small velvet box. Inside was the simplest engagement ring I had ever seen. It was perfect. Before I could answer, tears blurred my vision. "Grace Bennett." He smiled nervously. "Will you marry me?" "Yes." It was the easiest decision I had ever made. I thought telling my parents would be almost as easy. I couldn't have been more wrong. The moment Daniel's name came up during Sunday dinner, my father asked dozens of questions. What does he do? He works for Channel 8 News. What does his family do? His father served in the army. What church? What neighborhood? What income? Daniel answered every question politely. Dad barely looked at him. After dinner, Dad asked me to stay behind. The front door closed. Mom stood beside the kitchen counter with worried eyes. Dad folded his arms. You're not marrying him. I stared at him. What? You heard me. Why? He isn't right for this family. What does that even mean? It means exactly what I said. I waited. Surely there had to be a reason. Instead, he said something that left me speechless. Our family has spent generations building a respected name. So, I'm not letting you throw that away. Daniel had done nothing wrong. He wasn't abusive. He wasn't dishonest. He wasn't irresponsible. The only thing my father disliked was that Daniel came from a poor family. My father believed wealth determined character. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. So you're judging him because he grew up poor? I'm judging him because he can never give you the life you deserve. He already has. Dad laughed. No, Grace. He loves me. Love doesn't pay bills. I looked at my mother. She quietly stared at the floor. Mom. She didn't answer. That silence hurt almost as much as my father's words. The argument lasted nearly 2 hours. Nothing changed. When I left that night, my father spoke one final sentence. If you marry that boy, don't ever call this place home again. I drove away with tears running down my face. Daniel didn't ask questions when I walked into our apartment. They said no. I nodded. I'm sorry. It's not your fault. I know. He gently wiped away my tears. We'll build our own family. That moment, I believed him. 3 months later, we were married in a small chapel surrounded by friends, co-workers, and neighbors. There was one empty row near the front. 4 seats. Reserved for my parents and brother. Nobody ever sat there. I kept glancing toward the church doors anyway. Every daughter hopes, even when she knows better. When the ceremony ended, I cried in Daniel's arms. Not because I regretted marrying him, because I had just lost the family I spent my entire life trying to please. I didn't know that losing them was only the beginning. Exactly 1 week after our honeymoon, my phone rang. The caller ID showed my mother's number. My heart raced. Maybe they had changed their minds. Maybe they wanted to apologize. I answered immediately. Mom. Instead of hearing her voice, I heard a stranger. Is this Grace Bennett? Yes. My name is Pastor Michael Harris. Fear rushed through my body. Is my mother okay? There was a long silence. Then he quietly asked a question that made my blood run cold. Grace, where are you right now? I'm at home. Another pause. Then he whispered words I will never forget. Your parents told the entire church that you died 3 days ago. I couldn't breathe. For a few seconds, I honestly thought I had heard him wrong. I'm sorry. What did you just say? I whispered. Pastor Harris sighed heavily. Grace, your parents announced during Sunday service that you and your husband were killed in a highway accident. My knees gave out. I dropped onto the living room floor while Daniel rushed over. What happened? I couldn't answer. The phone almost slipped from my hand. Pastor Harris continued quietly. They held a memorial service yesterday. Hundreds of people came. Daniel looked terrified. Grace. I finally managed to speak. They told everyone we're dead. Daniel froze. What? They buried us. The words sounded impossible even as I said them. Pastor Harris spoke again. I knew something wasn't right. Why? Because there was never an obituary. No police report. No funeral home. No death certificate. Your father simply told everyone the accident happened out of state, and your bodies couldn't be viewed because of the damage. I covered my mouth. Tears rolled down my face. He lied. I'm afraid he did. Why are you calling me? I found your old internship information in the church office. It took me 3 days to locate your number. You believed I was alive? I hoped. Daniel gently took the phone. Thank you for telling us. After hanging up, neither of us spoke. The apartment became painfully quiet. Finally, Daniel asked the question I couldn't answer. Why would anyone do this? I stared at the engagement ring on my finger. I don't know. The next morning we drove straight to my parents' house. I wasn't angry anymore. I just wanted answers. Dad opened the front door. His face didn't show surprise, almost as if he had expected me. He looked at me for only a second, then calmly said, "You shouldn't be here." I stared at him. "You told everyone I was dead." "Yes." "Why?" "Because my daughter is dead." Those words hit harder than a slap. "No. The daughter I raised died the day she chose that man over her family." Daniel stepped forward. "Mr. Bennett, this has gone too far." Dad pointed toward the street. "Get off my property." Mom appeared behind him. The moment she saw me, her eyes filled with tears. For one second I thought she was going to hug me, and said, she quietly looked away. She couldn't even look at her own daughter. "Mom!" Her lips trembled. "I'm sorry." It was barely louder than a whisper. Dad shut the door. Right in our faces. The sound echoed inside my chest. Daniel reached for my hand. "We're leaving." I couldn't move. I kept staring at the closed door. Waiting. Hoping. Praying it would open again. It never did. 3 days later I discovered the lie had spread across the entire town. Old classmates posted memories of me online. Former teachers shared pictures. Neighbors sent flowers to my parents. People cried over someone who wasn't dead. My phone stopped ringing. Nobody answered my emails. One friend finally replied, "I thought someone hacked your account." "What do you mean?" "Grace." She paused. "We all attended your memorial." That was the moment I realized how complete my father's lie had become. According to everyone back home, I no longer existed. Daniel held me while I cried for almost an hour. "I don't know how to fight something like this." "You don't have to today." "But they're stealing my life." "No." He gently lifted my chin. "They're stealing their chance to be part of it." I wanted to believe him, but every morning I woke up feeling like a ghost. 2 months later another surprise arrived. A certified letter. From an attorney. My hand shook as I opened it. Inside were legal documents. I had officially been removed from my grandmother's trust. My father had convinced the family that I died before the inheritance was distributed. Everything I was supposed to receive had been divided between Ethan and my parents. Daniel read the papers twice. "This can't be legal." "It happened. We'll fight it." I don't even know where to start. That evening we met with an attorney named Rebecca Collins. She listened carefully without interrupting. When I finished, she slowly removed her glasses. "I've practiced law for 25 years. And I've never heard anything like this. Can they do it? They can lie. But they can't legally declare you dead. So," Rebecca smiled slightly, "you have rights." For the first time in weeks, I felt a tiny spark of hope. Then another twist came. Rebecca called 3 days later. "I found something strange." "What?" "Your father didn't just tell people you died." "What do you mean?" "He filed paperwork asking several organizations to update family records." My stomach tightened. "He actually tried to erase you." The words made me physically sick. I sat on the edge of the bed staring at nothing. Daniel quietly walked into the room. "What happened?" "They're deleting me." He sat beside me. "No. They're trying." He wrapped both arms around me. "You are sitting here. You are breathing. You are alive. No document can change that." I nodded. But inside, I felt like I had disappeared. Months passed. Money became tight. The legal battle was expensive. I worked during the day at a small local newspaper. At night I delivered groceries to help pay attorney fees. Daniel picked up extra weekend shifts. Some nights we didn't eat dinner until almost midnight. Though neither of us complained. One rainy Thursday I came home completely exhausted. Daniel had lit 2 candles because our electricity had been temporarily shut off. He smiled anyway. "I made grilled cheese." I laughed through tears. "By candlelight?" He grinned. 5-star restaurant. That tiny sandwich tasted better than any expensive meal I'd ever had. Because for the first time, Someone loved me without conditions. One evening, nearly a year after the fake funeral, I received a message on social media from someone I didn't recognize. Her name was Olivia Sanders. She wrote only one sentence. "I know why your father told everyone you were dead." My heart began racing. I immediately replied, "Who are you?" Several minutes passed. Then she answered, "I used to work for your father's accountant." Before I could type another message, she sent one final text. "We need to meet." Then, she disappeared offline. I had no idea that meeting Olivia would uncover a family secret so devastating. It would explain why my father had buried me while I was still alive. The next afternoon, Daniel insisted on coming with me. "I don't like you meeting a stranger alone," he said as he parked outside a small coffee shop on the edge of downtown Nashville. "I'll be okay." "I know you will. But I'm still coming." I smiled. That was Daniel. He never tried to control me. He simply wanted to protect me. Inside the cafe, a woman in her early 50s stood when she saw me. "You must be Grace." "I'm Olivia." Her hands were shaking as badly as mine. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Finally, she slid a thick manila envelope across the table. "I've carried this for almost 3 years." I looked at it. "What is it?" "The truth." Daniel glanced at me. "Open it." Inside were copies of business records, bank statements, property documents, insurance papers. None of them made any sense. "I'm sorry. I don't understand." Olivia took a slow breath. "Your father wasn't trying to erase you because you embarrassed the family." "What do you mean?" "He was hiding something." I frowned. "What?" She looked around to make sure nobody was listening. His construction company had been collapsing for years. I blinked. "What?" "He owed millions of dollars." My heart skipped a beat. "That can't be right." "It is." She pointed to one document. "Before you got married, several investors were preparing to sue him." Daniel leaned closer. "What does that have to do with Grace?" Olivia hesitated. "Everything." She swallowed hard. "Your grandmother's trust had a rule." I looked at her. "What rule?" "If one of the grandchildren died before receiving their inheritance, their share returned to the family estate." The room suddenly felt much smaller. "My father." Olivia slowly nodded. "He needed money desperately." "No. He couldn't legally touch your inheritance while you were alive." I stared at her. "So he convinced everyone you had died and redirected the money." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The fake funeral had never been about family honor. It had been about money. Daniel looked furious. "He stole from his own daughter." Olivia quietly nodded. "And that's only half the story." I felt sick. "What else?" She reached into her purse and pulled out an old photograph. This was taken 12 years ago. It showed my father shaking hands with several businessmen. One face immediately caught my attention. I recognized him. "Wait. That's Senator Robert Chambers." Olivia nodded. "Your father built homes for several powerful people. So, he used fake invoices." My stomach dropped. "What?" "He charged for materials that were never purchased." Daniel looked stunned. "Fraud." Olivia nodded. "For years. And when investigators started asking questions, he needed cash." Silence filled the table. Finally I whispered, "So I wasn't dead because he hated me." Olivia looked into my eyes. "He hated losing control." The words hit me harder than anything else. For my father, I wasn't his daughter. I was an asset, a reputation, a financial problem. Nothing more. That night I couldn't sleep. Daniel found me sitting on the porch just before sunrise. "You okay?" I laughed bitterly. "No." He sat beside me. "What are you thinking?" "My whole childhood." "What about it?" "I spent 24 years trying to earn love." I looked at him. "But he never wanted a daughter. He wanted someone he could control." Daniel gently squeezed my hand. "You know something?" "What?" "You already won." I frowned. "How?" "You learned how to love." He never did. I rested my head on his shoulder. For the first time, I stopped blaming myself. 2 weeks later, Rebecca, our attorney, called. "You need to come in." Her voice sounded unusually serious. When we arrived, several folders covered her desk. I verified Olivia's documents. And they're authentic. I closed my eyes. So it's true. Rebecca nodded. But something even bigger happened. What? She slid a newspaper across the desk. The headline froze me. Federal investigation opens into Bennett construction. I looked up. My father. They've started investigating financial fraud. Daniel slowly exhaled. What happens now? Rebecca looked at me. That depends. On what? Whether you're willing to testify. The room became silent. I know. But I don't want him hurting anyone else. Daniel nodded. Those aren't the same thing. I looked at him. What do you mean? Justice isn't revenge. Justice stops people from hurting others. His words stayed with me all night. 3 days later, I agreed to testify. The investigation lasted almost 18 months. During that time, I continued working as a reporter. Life slowly improved. My articles began receiving national attention. I focused on stories about corruption, missing children, homeless veterans, and families forgotten by the system. Readers connected with my work. Editors noticed. One article changed everything. It exposed a charity director who had stolen millions meant for sick children. The story went viral. Within a week, every major news network wanted interviews. CNN, ABC, NBC, Fox. Then something unbelievable happened. I received a phone call from New York. Hello, Grace. This is Jennifer from Good Morning America. We'd like to feature your investigative work during next month's National Journalism Awards. For several seconds, forgot how to breathe. Daniel nearly dropped his coffee when I told him. They're serious? I laughed. I think so. He pulled me into the biggest hug. I told you. What? One day the whole country would know your name. A month later, I stood backstage in New York City. Bright lights surrounded me. Producers rushed through the hallways wearing headsets. Someone adjusted my microphone. Another person counted down to the live broadcast. My heart pounded. Then the host smiled. And now, please welcome award-winning investigative journalist Grace Bennett. The audience erupted into applause. As I walked onto the stage, I had no idea that hundreds of miles away, in a small living room outside Nashville, my parents had just turned on the television, and for the first time in 9 years, they were looking at the daughter they had told the world was dead. The studio audience stood and applauded. For a moment, I couldn't hear anything except the sound of my own heartbeat. 9 years. 9 years of pain. 9 years of rebuilding. 9 years of learning how to live without the people who were supposed to love me. And now I was standing under national television lights. Not because of my family name. Not because of my father's money. Because of my own work. The host smiled. Grace, your reporting has exposed corruption, protected vulnerable families, and helped law enforcement recover millions of stolen dollars. The audience applauded again. What inspired you to become this kind of journalist? I froze. The question was simple. The answer wasn't. For a second, I considered giving the safe response. Something professional. Something forgettable. Instead, I told the truth. When I was younger, someone I trusted taught me how dangerous lies can become. The audience became quiet. I continued. Those lies destroyed relationships. They destroyed trust. And they changed lives forever. I paused. But they also taught me something important. The host nodded. What was that? I smiled softly. The truth always survives. The audience erupted into applause. At that exact moment, my parents sat frozen in front of their television. Their dead daughter was alive. Not only alive, thriving, respected, loved, successful, and speaking about truth. The very thing they had spent years trying to bury. The interview ended. The camera stopped rolling. I felt relieved, exhausted, free. Then my phone started vibrating. Again, and again, and again. Hundreds of notifications. Old classmates, former teachers, neighbors, people from church. Everyone asking the same question. Grace, you're alive. What happened? My hands trembled. 9 years of lies had just exploded in a single evening. Then another message appeared. It was from Ethan, my brother. The first message I had received from him in almost a decade. 3 words. I need explanations. I stared at the screen. For years I had imagined this moment. Now that it had arrived, I didn't know what to feel. The next morning another surprise came. Someone knocked on our front door. Daniel looked through the window. His face changed immediately. What is it? He slowly turned around. You should probably sit down. My stomach tightened. Why? They're here. I already knew. My parents. For several seconds I couldn't move. Then came another knock. Slow. Nervous. Nothing like the confident knock my father used to have. I opened the door. Time seemed to stop. Dad looked older than I remembered. Much older. His hair was almost completely gray. His shoulders were slumped. His eyes looked tired. Mom was crying before she even spoke. Nobody moved. Nobody smiled. Nobody knew where to begin. Finally Dad said the words I never expected to hear. We saw the interview. I nodded. Silence. Then Mom whispered, You look beautiful. The sentence nearly broke me, because it sounded like something a mother should have said years ago. Not now. Not after 9 years. Not after a funeral. Not after erasing me. I crossed my arms. What do you want? Neither of them answered. That told me everything. They needed something. Finally Dad spoke. We need help. There it was. The truth. Not love. Not reconciliation. Need. I almost laughed. What kind of help? Mom began crying harder. Dad stared at the ground. The investigation. My heart sank. Of course. The fraud case. He nodded. We lost everything. I said nothing. The company is gone. Still nothing. The house is gone. Silence. Then he looked directly at me. And your mother is sick. For the first time. I looked closely. Mom seemed thinner. Fragile. Tired. I suddenly noticed the scarf around her head. A feeling of dread washed over me. What happened? Mom wiped her eyes. Cancer. The word landed heavily. Nobody spoke. Cancer. Part of me wanted to feel sympathy. Part of me wanted to remember every birthday they missed. Every Christmas. Every phone call that never came. Every tear. Every lie. All of it crashed together inside me. Finally I stepped aside. Come in. The conversation lasted nearly 4 hours. And somehow, it hurt more than the fake funeral, because for the first time, there were no lies left. Dad admitted everything. The fraud. The theft. The inheritance. The fake death. The manipulation. Everything. I was terrified. He stared at the floor. I thought I was protecting everything I built. You destroyed everything you built. His eyes filled with tears. I know. Mom quietly reached into her purse. She pulled out a small envelope. Her hands were shaking. What is this? She handed it to me. I wrote this 9 years ago. I opened it carefully. Inside was a letter. One she had never sent. My vision blurred as I read. Page after page of apologies. Regret. Confessions. Fear. One sentence shattered me completely. I wanted to come find you 1,000 times, but I was too weak to stand against your father. A tear rolled down my cheek. Then another. Then another. Mom began crying. I failed you. The room became silent. For years I had dreamed about hearing those words. Now that I finally heard them, they didn't fix anything, but they mattered. Dad reached into his jacket. I have something too. He handed me a small box. Inside was every birthday card I had ever made for him as a child. Every drawing. Every Father's Day gift. Every handmade note. My throat tightened. You kept these. He nodded. I looked at them almost every day. I stared at him. Then why didn't you call? His voice broke. Because every year that passed made me more ashamed. Nobody spoke. Then Daniel finally said something. The simplest sentence in the room. You should have called anyway. Dad nodded. I know. Weeks passed. Then months. Cancer treatments began. Mom grew weaker. Despite everything, I found myself driving her to appointments, sitting beside hospital beds. helping with paperwork. Not because I forgot. Not because they deserved it. Because I wanted to be different from them. One afternoon during treatment, Mom looked at me. You know what hurts most? What? I missed your life. She started crying. I missed your wedding. I missed your first home. I missed everything. I looked away. Because she was right. No amount of apologies could bring those years back. One evening, several months later, Ethan arrived unexpectedly. He sat beside me on the hospital waiting room bench. I owe you an apology. I laughed softly. You're late. 9 years late. We both smiled. Then he surprised me. I knew Dad was lying. I looked at him. What? Not at first. He swallowed hard. But eventually I figured it out. Anger flashed through me. You knew. I was scared. I shook my head. Everyone was scared. He looked down. I know. For a long moment neither of us spoke. Then I finally said, you still should have called. His eyes filled with tears. I know. Months later another twist arrived. Mom's treatment was successful. The cancer went into remission. For the first time in years, there was hope. Then something happened I never expected. Dad publicly confessed. Not in private. Not to me. To everyone. A church. In front of the same congregation where he had announced my death. The building was packed. People listened in complete silence as he admitted everything. The fraud. The lies. The fake funeral. The theft. Every terrible choice. Some people walked out. Some cried. Some looked shocked. When he finished, he stepped away from the microphone. No excuses. No blame. No defense. Just truth. For once. The church became completely silent. Then he said one final thing. The greatest mistake of my life was choosing pride over my daughter. There wasn't a dry eye in the room, including mine. A year later, life looked very different. Forgiveness is refusing to let pain control the rest of your future. The scars remain, but they stop bleeding. Today, when I look around my life, I see something my younger self desperately wanted. Not a perfect family. A real one. A family built on truth. A family built on accountability. A family built on second chances. My father once taught me that reputation was everything. Life taught me something better. Character is everything. Because reputation is what people think you are. Character is who you are when nobody is watching. Blood may create a family, but love, respect, honesty, and forgiveness are what truly keep one together. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear what you would have done in this situation. My parents lived in a small apartment. Nothing luxurious. Nothing impressive. Dad volunteered at local charities. Mom helped cancer patients navigate treatment programs. Neither expected forgiveness. Neither demanded trust. They simply showed up. Day after day. Month after month. Trying. That's when I finally understood something. Forgiveness isn't forgetting. Forgiveness isn't pretending the past never happened.